All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to kick it off here. All right, we had a small pullback on Friday in the S&P, but the Dow was up. The Nasdaq was down about 0.5%. S&P was down about 0.4%, and the Dow was actually up 0.25%. But you can see there that most of the sectors, or all the sectors, in fact, were down across the board. We haven't really gotten any leadership on earnings yet. We've actually seen what I would consider kind of lackluster earnings, more or less the same that we saw last quarter. Obviously, last quarter the market managed to rally, even though most of the earnings were a miss and were revising lower. This month we're seeing more of the same, but the market, I think, is going to need a little bit more than that to continue this rally. We also had we had a mixed day in the Asian session. Sorry, before I move on, it's Martin Luther King Day today in the States, so we're going to be closed there. So just keep that in mind. Things could be a little bit slow today. All right, Asia, mixed action. Kospi was up, but everything else was down on the day. I think maybe just following a bit in the back of the footsteps in the U.S. We did have some data out of China showing that the industrial output figures were more or less in line. The GDP number was slightly better, but just kind of going in line with expectations. But I think what the significant thing is it is kind of slowing down there as everyone expects, and the Shanghai just continues to lag. I mean, it just can't seem to rally under any circumstances at the moment. I think that's going to end up being a big story rather soon in the market. There's some big whispers that it seem to be increasing every day. Shadow banking system. There's some rumors out end of last week about some of the local banking and that some of the governments weren't going to take over and weren't going to protect some of the local debt. I think the market's starting to get a little bit shaky on the back of that. All right, we also had platinum price has been pushing a little bit higher over the last few sessions. We're up over 1450 now, 1460 this morning, on the back also of the strikes that have been announced. I mean, they're wanting double plus wage increases on some of the mines, so I think it's going to be another battle continuing on into 2014. All right, stocks going to ex-div today. We've got Clicks, Lewis, and ARLs. We also have, obviously, like we said, Lawman and Amplats that are going to, AMCU union's going to strike at those mines today, so keep that in mind. All right, as we said before, the GDP data in China was a touch better. We're actually a touch light in industrial production, in line on retail sales, so more or less dead in line overall in China, but slowing slightly there. We also have Japanese industrial production this morning, which is a little less than prior numbers, and capacity utilization the same. We've got PPI numbers later out of Germany, and we've got convenience store sales to Japan later, but I think we'll just ignore this. Japanese PPI, German PPI, maybe we pay attention to at the opening bell. All right, let's have a look at the maps. All right, the first one we'll have a look at is just BGA. I know a gazillion people have this position on, just kind of dropping really where we were bottoming out. I think 130, we had a couple closes around 130. We dropped 130 on a closing basis. To me, the whole market on Friday felt really soft. We felt soft, and we also, outside of the mining sector, we actually just felt, like there's no interest whatsoever in the market. So I think it's a bit concerning to me, if the rally and the miners stop and take a breather for a day or two, that we might start to really show some sort of correction. So I would keep that in mind. Barclays one of the ones that's dropping what I think is major support there. I think it's just showed a failure at every point, at every chance it had to rally. It might be time to actually make the exits there. All right, first trend, we were showing support here a little bit on a little short-term trend support play. We dropped out the bottom of that below the 33.80 level for good on Friday. We closed down at 33.43 pretty much at the lows of the day. And I would expect, so let's just bounce back here just a little bit. I would maybe even expect a correction, somewhere to the lower end of the recent correction, maybe down around the 200-day moving average, around the $32, somewhere in there. But definitely dropping some sort of support there. Almost looking a bit double topish out of first trend. So just be careful. Like we said, the market feels really shaky at the moment. Very, very. Very heavy in pretty much every sector outside the miners. All right, ShopRite. Let's actually go back to a 1 year here real quick. And I mean, just how ugly this is. We'll actually just take it from the wicks just for good measure, because we did kind of still close above where those wicks were. We totally dropped out the bottom of that. I would look more definitively at the 58 level was definitely, I think, what the real level was. But bottom line is, we really ripped lower on Friday. It was an ugly session. The entire index, the entire sector sold off, I think, outside of Foschini. And I would fully expect a very high likelihood of a second day play in a lot of these retailers today. So just keep that in mind. Usually when we see these retailers move, check our first real major red bar here. I mean, let's go all the way back to July when we saw that first real red bar there. I mean, it gave us a huge sell-off there. Look here in November, first red bar there. It gave us another, probably 2 weeks of selling. That when this thing does put in a major move like that, every time, even if on the upward side, you see these major green candle here, we kind of get a follow through to the upside. This is I think consistent throughout the sector, so keep that in mind that we might really get a proper correction on that today. All right, Sunlam, I'm actually going to show this again. I know we looked at this before on Friday. I'm just going to cut that one little spot out of there because it's an incredibly consistent chart, especially if you just take we didn't even close up there, so it's just kind of on the open. But right down here at around 49.20 is I think where major support is on Sunlam. I think if you give that up, I think it's really going to get hit pretty hard. It's also just above where the 200-day is. You can really see there that we did close down. We had a bad session on Friday. We've probably had 4 or 5 red sessions in a row, and I think if I'm not mistaken, we closed down about 50-60 cents on Friday. So around 49.20, really watch that level closely. There's some major support there. If we drop out of 49.20, then I think you got to be out of any longs that you'd be in Sanlam. All right, let's look at Anglos. We're kind of going to have a look at this the top from the back half of the year. We topped out at 257, call it 3 times on a closing basis, 3 times, maybe on an intraday basis, even call it 4 times. We popped right up to that 257 level intraday on Friday again and pulled back $9. So we really had a big correction there on Friday. You can see how hard it's run. I mean, it put in 3 huge days in a row, so I think it was just totally exhausted from rallying from about 220 all the way up to 257. And I think we need to wait and hope this thing maybe pulls back down to around here, maybe closer to the 230 level to start to nibble for a little bit of a support play. All right, and then the last one we're going to have a look at is Kumba. Kumba, let's jump into a 1 year here. Kumba, you can see, we talked about this before, the past week and a half, making a little inverse head and shoulder, a little inverse table mountain, and you can see here that about, call it 449, you can call it 450, somewhere in there, is really where the neckline is, and we popped up nicely through that on the trading statement on Friday. Taking this thing, call it from 390 to 450, and it gives us a target of 510 to the upside, which is all the way up here. So we got a hell of a long way in terms of a target. I would say short-term target, I'd look to at least retest the recent highs and the really significant 480 level in Kumba. So watch for that move quickly up to 480. We've popped through the neckline here on the inverse head and shoulders. We popped through the 200-day, and it's on Obviously the whole sector is running, mining sector is running in conjunction. They've also had really good earnings, or sorry, really good trading statement there. So I think they still have some room to run. And that's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot.